so simple and yet so beautiful. Landscapes of little crystals, patterns within patterns within patterns, and delving into those patterns, nature's fractals, well, we know that that gives us a calming effect. It's part of one of the ways that nature can heal us. And that's our mission tonight. Yes, what the doctor is prescribing is a good dose of WinterWatch. And our theme tonight is winter well-being. And we're going to celebrate by starting with some very special opening titles. Just look and listen to these. Welcome to WinterWatch. Welcome to WinterWatch. What about that? Surely we don't deserve such magnificent orchestration. Huge thanks to Steve Pycroft and the Kaleidoscope Orchestra. They're working at home in their own rooms, putting all of that together. Bit of Vivaldi, bit of our theme, bit of natural sounds to produce that different take on our titles. Because as I mentioned, our theme tonight is all about natural well-being, and we'll be exploring that through the programme. How being in nature makes us feel good, or sometimes just looking at nature remotely, listening to nature remotely, can have the same effect. And one of the ways, of course, that we look at nature is using our remote cameras, all of those live cameras that we've got set up, some in Scotland, some in Wales, some down here in the New Forest. Here they all are at the moment. Just having a little look round. Can't see any activity at the moment. We've had, of course, plenty of activity, particularly this week at Aberystwyth, underneath that pier where all of those starlings are going to roost. If you were watching yesterday, you'll know we had a predation event, and when the programme finished, eyes were glued to those live cameras to see if the owl would turn up, and it did. Yes. And look, its black beady eyes betray one thing. It's only got one thing that it really wants to happen, and that is a late supper. Did it happen? Find out later in the programme. Now, aside from all of our cameras, the presenters are scattered all over the UK as well. I'm down here in the New Forest. Iolo is in mid-Wales, of course, and Gillian is down in Cornwall. Now, Gillian, I was going to say good evening. It's just started to rain here. I hope it hasn't started where you are, but nevertheless, good evening, Gillian.
And good evening to you too, Chris. And it has started raining here. But you know what? We're going to stick it out, because this is all about getting out into the outdoors, because that's how we know that nature can help to give us a boost, and it's all for well-being as well. We're going to be looking at the sights and the sounds later on of nature in the programme. But what if you can't get out into nature, and you might not want to on a night like tonight? But can a simple picture with all the right elements still lift your spirits? Well, you've been sending us loads of your amazing pictures. It's been really hard to choose, but I picked out a couple to see how this could work. Now, this is from Paul Farrington, taken in Leeds. And there's calming, cool colours. Can really help to sort of dial down the energy, really cool you down. But also, that tree line receding there, I think that's just such a beautiful image. But what if you need to dial that energy up? Feeling a bit low, you need a boost. What about this one from Sophie Taylor? This was a photograph taken in Ullswater in the Lake District. And those colours just say, oh, they're on fire, it's energising. That really does dial the energy up. So these are the sort of images in my mind that can really help to boost your mood and keep them coming. We absolutely love them. Now, Iolo is in mid-Wales. He's been rifling through all the images that you've been sending through. And Iolo, have you picked out your favourite?
Gillian, I loved your photos, but you know what I'm like. I'm not much of a romantic. I like things that make me laugh. And that's what this photograph did. It's a red deer hind in a blizzard, staring right at camerawoman Paula Redmond there. If you look closely, she's sticking out her tongue. I think what's happened is that a snowflake has landed on her nose. She's just gone to lick it off. But Paula, I love that one. It brought a big smile to my face. And Chris, you've got a smile, haven't you?
A super photograph, Iolo, no doubt about that at all. Very beautiful, like the tongue. Tongue makes it, of course. You always need a little bit of detail in a photograph like that to make it stand out. Now, we know that being out in nature makes us feel good. There's an increasing amount of science which tells us that that's not something that's subjective, it's quite empirical. And our cameras have been out and about in nature all across the UK this week. This is what we found in Scotland, as many people did. Yes, the landscape was blanketed in snow, but snow transforms that landscape. It simplifies it. Look here, the patterns are reduced, everything's softened. The colour has gone, it becomes more accessible, instantly accessible to us. And then, of course, there's the sound. That blanket of snow quashes all of the sharp sounds. Definitely makes it a much more calming experience when you're out and about in snow like that. So the landscape itself can have a very profound impact on the way that we feel. But we also know that we can feel joy and euphoria when we just see wildlife, particularly if it's things that really excite us, like otters. Now, these animals are so difficult to see in the wild that if you were to catch a glimpse of one, we've caught them here on our cameras, it's the sort of thing you're never, ever going to forget. This will tattoo itself in your brain as a memory, which you're going to cherish for the rest of your life. I can still remember little things that I saw as a child, as a teenager, and they're as fresh now as they were when I first saw them. And sometimes I do recall them. I bring them out and I play with them, and they put a smile on my face years and years and years after I first saw them. That's how important connecting to nature can be. And we know it works because it's not just me, it's plenty of other people. Cam Robinson is one. He heard that there were some otters that had taken up residence quite close to the centre of Edinburgh. So he went out to see if he could find them. I won't give the game away, but yes, he did. He found them. But then he encountered a problem because he wanted to stay in touch with these animals, but I'm afraid he couldn't. It was a problem that he needed to overcome in a, what shall we say, paternal way. Have a look at this.
My story begins in the city of Edinburgh, way back in the summer in August, when, despite the pandemic, I managed to have one of the best wildlife filmmaking moments of my life. So it's around 6:30 in the morning. I'm here at the base of Arthur's Seat in the middle of Edinburgh, and I'm here this early because I heard a rumour yesterday that living in a small man-made loch near the top of this thing is an otter. So I've been filming the otter now for about an hour, and it's really active feeding. It'll start on the surface and then dive underneath, swimming around, and will then pop up somewhere nearby, often with a fish in its mouth. Now, otters are carnivores and they mainly eat fish, but they do also eat small mammals, small birds, eels, even frogs. Seeing the otter right there in the heart of my home city was just really special to me, as I had never actually seen one in the wild before. And according to the rangers in Hollywood Park, if it wasn't for that initial lockdown and the resulting road closures in the area, the otter would likely have never made that journey up onto Arthur's Seat in the first place. And now it's winter. So naturally, I want to go back to Arthur's Seat and check in on the otter to find out how it's dealing with the new freezing conditions. Except, I can't. I'm under lockdown near London, and despite my garden being home to quite a lot of wildlife, I am yet to see any otters. But I do have a plan, a secret weapon. You see, I know an Edinburgh-based photographer, Eric, who also goes by the name Dad. So, like the good son that I am, I sent him up Arthur's Seat in the below freezing conditions on a mission to try and find and, if possible, film the otter. Hey Dad, how you doing?
After we spoke about it, I went up in the morning and there was no otter, either on the Monday morning, the Tuesday morning, or the Wednesday morning. I then went home and came back up in the afternoon, and then I spotted this guy.
Oh Dad, that's excellent. Look at that.
And then I thought, wow, then they climbed it onto the ice.
Amazing, I didn't know you'd got that. What's fascinating to me is seeing the otter use the ice both as a platform to hunt from, but then also to return to eat its food, which is probably either a fish or maybe a hibernating frog that is dug out from the mud on the loch bottom. And perhaps most exciting of all, according to the Hollywood Park Rangers, there are now not just one, but 3 otters living in that loch, which is just amazing. And my hope is that come springtime, maybe if lockdown is lifted, I can get back to Arthur's Seat and witness these amazing wild animals in person once again.
I am keeping fingers crossed, everything crossed, for Cam Robinson to be able to get up to Scotland again in the spring and catch a glimpse of those otters. Wouldn't it be amazing to see more of those? Now, we have a close encounter of a mammalian kind, but of a different species. This is the orca, otherwise known as the killer whales. Now, on the 4th of January, an individual strayed too close to shore on Sunday Island. This is up in Orkney. Now, it was spotted by a couple from their home overlooking the beach, and they immediately called out the team from British Divers Marine Life Rescue. And they worked pretty calmly, actually, but methodically around the animal, trying to measure it, get all vital stats, and work out, crucially, how they're going to rescue it. This is a big animal. So the team were able to work with the incoming tide there. They were obviously having to work quickly to make sure it wasn't submerged and risk suffocating, but they used a dolphin stretcher, and they used that to move it into deeper and deeper water. Now, you can hear it was under distress. It was calling quite a bit. That is now known to be a male, but as soon as he got into deep enough water, he headed out with a very powerful tail fin slap and with a different sound, and he swam powerfully and purposely out to sea. And they knew that he was a healthy male, he was of a good weight, and they haven't seen him since. So they reckon this was a good outcome and very likely to be the first successful refloating of an orca in Britain, in the UK. And they did that in little less than an hour and a half. And so that's an amazing, amazing bit of work, teamwork there from BDMLR. Now, there's still lots of questions, but one of the things that we were thinking is, well, where did this male come from? Why did he beach? Where was his family, the pod? Lots of questions still unanswered. But one of the things that we do know is he was a young male. He was about 3 to 4 years old, so possibly had made a navigational error, and that's why he's stranded. But another possibility is there may have been an isolated stress event out at sea that made him swim to shore in that way. Now, scientists studying other whale and dolphin species really have a good understanding now of how stress, and particularly anthropogenic stress, man-made stress, is caused to marine mammals. Now, they know that their ears, unbelievably, have a very, very little secret archive of information. You can see it there. They're located just behind the eye. Now, the ears have an earplug. It's made of wax, very much like in our ears. And just like the growth rings in a tree, the wax is laid down in layers, and you can see it there. And each line representing another layer of wax. And each one of those layers has the stress hormone cortisol. And it has a percentage of that stress hormone captured in the earplug. So this is an actual earplug from a whale. Now, working with the specimens at the Natural History Museum, they've been able to build up a historical picture of using lots of earplugs from lots of different specimens of whales to build up a picture of how stress and human-made stress, human-caused stress in the ocean, has affected whale populations over the last century or more. Now, lots of peaks and troughs, which indicate spikes in stress levels. One of the significant spikes in the stress levels actually corresponds with World War II. And it may not be immediately obvious how this might stress out whales, but take a look at this footage and I think it becomes pretty clear. Now this is archive footage from the war and all that naval artillery fire, that heavy shelling, but also sonar underwater for submarines to navigate. That would interfere with all the marine mammals that use sound for not just communicating with each other, but also for navigating the ocean. So that would have been very stressful. Another big peak here would have been a peak in whaling, which then dropped off as whaling bans came into force. And then ever since then, there's been another steady rise in stress levels in whale populations. And this is likely to do with all kinds of pollution, whether it's sound pollution, chemical pollution, even rising sea temperatures. So it's a really complicated picture on how we're going to meet the challenge of making our seas a better place for our marine mammals. But they are still a refuge for some people. And wild swimming has become a lifeline for many, especially since the lockdown. It's not just an opportunity to connect with nature, but it's also with every plunge like an emotional reset. And Katie Maggs tells us her story, how she found her peace, but also her strength in the ocean.
I feel like, in a way, the ocean, well, it saved my life. If someone's struggling with anything in their life, then, you know, that can be illness, it can be stress, anxiety, it can be work, family, all those things that we get caught up in. Nature and the ocean has the capacity to improve that for you. When we come too far away from nature, the reason we struggle and we become unwell is because we're forgetting we are nature. We're part of it. So of course it makes sense that to return to nature is something that's going to significantly improve our lives. I've always been, you know, healthy and well and looked after myself, but life just got on top of me. I'm a mother, I run a home, I'm a deputy at an FE college, I care for my dad, I just have all of those normal life responsibilities. I suffered chronic burnout and essentially had a breakdown. The sea's always been really calming to me, a really comforting element. But there just came a point looking at it and looking at the surface just wasn't enough for me. I wanted to understand that world that was underneath me, a world that actually gave me some solace and some calm. When my life on land was actually quite chaotic and noisy. So my recovery came through daily dawn swimming. It's amazing how much life there is. People look at the sea and think it looks grey and dark, and actually underneath is this incredible underwater world that looks like it's somewhere from the tropics rather than dark, stormy Cornwall. I'm a marine life photographer and I do a lot of snorkeling, a lot of sea swimming. And that was my kind of connection to finding nature and marine life. I love photographing compass jellyfish. They have an incredible marking on the top which looks like a compass. But it's more so the connection with them. You really get used to their movements and how they move so effortlessly in the water. But also just the connection in the sense of how calming they are and mesmerising to watch. I had an amazing experience with a juvenile shag. So I was in snorkeling, but in the shallows, and they're quite curious, the juvenile ones, so they do come up really close to us when we're swimming or snorkeling. And it came up and kept pecking my camera lens. It was a comical experience, really, because I was a bit like, oh, don't peck my face, but it was so happy just to keep kind of pecking on the glass. And it really wasn't bothered by me. I think maybe because I was quite calm and I'd been in its surroundings for a while. I got out feeling like, wow, that has made my year, having that relationship with that animal. Along with the chance of the amazing wildlife encounters I've had, I realised that the water was affecting me, and I kind of, in the early days, began to wonder why. When you're not very well or you're struggling with life stresses, it's something that helps you to feel more brave, that you're able to cope with things better because you've got this level of resilience, even if I just dipped in. And so the rest of your day becomes easier because you think, do you know what, if I can do that at any point in the day, then I can deal with anything. It's kind of combined all my passions, really. I come down on my little mini adventures, find new things. People always say to me, wow, you know, your pictures are amazing, and how do you know so much about jellyfish, or how do you know so much about these anemones that you found, or all the different types of starfish? But I didn't know it before. I just went home and looked it up. And that's what's so amazing, is that anybody can do that. You don't have to be a specialist in marine life. You just need to be curious about it.
Well, wild swimming, of course, is becoming very popular these days, but if you are out and about, then please, please, please respect the wildlife. Give it room, especially things like dolphins. You know, don't approach them, just let them be. Enjoy it by all means, and stay safe too. And if you're worried about safety out there, visit our website. There's a lot of information on there for you. Now, over the last few days, the nation has gone absolutely bonkers for the Aberystwyth Pier starling. It's better than anything else on TV. Forget your soap operas, just tune in to us here on WinterWatch. We've enjoyed them, of course, as they murmurate in the evening, coming in, giving a terrific show, and then going under the pier to roost. We've seen them in the middle of the night, and as we know, it's not always safe under there. But what we haven't seen yet is what happens in the morning. So let's have a look. Well, it's very much the reverse of what happens in the evening. They are, of course, lined up in their ranks there, and once the first light penetrates the sky, they start to get a little bit more restless. They jostle for position, and they start to drop down from the top girders and line up along the edges there, just getting ready to go. But they won't venture out until it's light enough, looking out over Aberystwyth there, looking at the seafront. And when they go in their thousands. They really do. It's like a military operation. And as I said, it's the reverse of what happens in the morning. You get hundreds, thousands of them heading off, but then they divide up into smaller flocks because they're heading out for the surrounding fields. We know that they'll travel several miles. Some of them surely will end up on bird tables feeding on fat balls, but the vast majority are heading out to the surrounding fields where they'll probe, looking for leather jacket grubs, looking for earthworms. They'll feed all day, and then once the light starts to fade, they'll head back once more. Now, last night, of course, we saw a barn owl turn up on the pier, take a starling, and then take it away. It came back last night. But what happened then? Let's have a look. Now, we've tweaked one of our cameras so we get a better view. We can follow the drama. The barn owl came back into a flat roof area on top of the pier. It settled itself, had a bit of a look around, made sure it was safe, but it knew exactly where he was going. It then dropped down, headed under the pier, and landed exactly where it landed last night, except it went further in this time. It ignored some of the starlings, but there, bear in mind, it's pitch black in there. It locked on to the starling that it wanted with its wonderful eyesight and superb hearing. Down it goes, scattering all the other starlings, and landed on one poor victim in there. Now, these have got claws like needles, and once it's got hold of that starling, it's the end for it. It started to pluck it just a little bit in there, but it's surrounded by starling feces. So he thinks, right, I've got to get out of here. Picks up the starling in its beak and heads straight down the barrel of the camera. And because we've shifted the position of our cameras, we were able to see it come back up to where it first landed. It then landed on the old pipes there. Now bear in mind, I think this is a male because it's got quite a clean chest. And that male will weigh roughly about 330 grams. The starling itself is 80 grams, so that's quite a meal for it. Begins to devour it. It'll devour most of it, the beak, the brain, the meat. They always have trouble with wings, barn owls. I've been to barn owl roosts where they're feeding on starlings, and often you find scattered wings there. But this one perseveres. And of course it's important to take the feathers along with the bones and the beak, because that's roughage for when they want to bring up a pellet later on. Down it goes. And what it does then is, obviously it's a big meal, so it's caching what's left of that starling underneath the old pipe there. It's no guarantee that if it comes back that it'll be able to catch another starling, so it'll remember that it's cached that food away and it can come up and eat that at a later date. It then settles, it looks like it's about to go, cleans its beak, probably thinks, well, I'm in a safe, dry place under the roof here, so there's no point going off into the rain. Isn't that fantastic? Absolutely fantastic. And Chris down there in the New Forest, do you know what? The amazing thing is that the barn owl has either come along the coast, come over Aberystwyth town itself to that pier, but I suspect now it knows that there's a plentiful supply of food there that's easy to catch, it's going to keep coming back.
I think so. It's, what did you call it earlier?
Yeah,
a starling buffet.
It's a starling buffet. It's got itself into a routine.
Got itself into a routine that pays dividends. It gets the starling every night. Now, we've been saying throughout the programme, and many of you don't need telling, that being out in nature can have a profound effect on your well-being and can give you a sense of being uplifted. But what about just watching nature? What about watching it, say, now, as you are on WinterWatch, or on the internet, or on your device? Could that have a similar effect? Well, certainly worth exploring. And I'm pleased to say that there is research taking place at the University of Exeter by Alex Smalley, a psychologist there, and he's looking at the positive benefits of just watching nature virtually. And a couple of days ago, I asked him some questions about that research. Here's what he said. Alex, at the moment this is probably particularly pertinent as people are locked down. They're spending a lot more time indoors than out. So getting a virtual fix of wildlife could be really beneficial to them at this time.
I think you're exactly right, Chris. And when we initially started out with this kind of research, understanding responses to virtual nature, we were very much thinking about people who might be, say, in long-term care and can't get outside, or for people recovering from, say, major surgery and are stuck in quite clinical settings. Over the last year, we've all had an insight into what that feels like when we can't get out into nature. And so trying to understand a bit more at a sort of population level, I think is really important.
I think what some people might find very surprising initially is that your work now suggests that we don't actually have to be out in nature. We can actually get similar benefits through watching it virtually, digitally.
That's right. What we're finding now is that if we view these digital encounters, watching nature on TV, online, as actually therapeutic tools in their own right, there could be something in that to help us bring the benefits of the outdoors to people who can't otherwise get outside.
And are there certain aspects of that nature which are more rewarding than others? I mean, we've known for a long time that if we sit down alongside pools of water or go for walks by the sea, that very often that can provide a calming influence to our lives. So have you managed to identify little elements of nature which we should focus upon?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The presence of water, what we call blue space, spending time next to lakes, canals, rivers, seems really important. But also this sort of role of biodiversity. People notice when species richness is increased, where there's flora and fauna that people can recognise, watch and respond to. And I'm really interested also in the sort of range of geological features and what we'd call these sort of fleeting experiences in nature, things like sunrises and sunsets, things which can really come to define a person's encounter.
On our watches, we've been running these mindfulness moments where we have about 90 seconds, a cameo of a place. And we found that our audience is entranced by these. They become very popular very quickly. Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't at all, actually, and it sort of harks back to some of the ideas that I think that underpin our responses to nature. You know, there's one school of thought that kind of says, well, actually, we evolved in natural environments. We should have an innate, a biophilic preference for viewing them, for spending time in them. There's also another camp that says, actually, you know what? There are qualities that are inherent in nature, things which can capture our fascination, hold our attention, and help those parts of our brain which might be stressed out or tired after a long day to recover. And I think the kind of mindful moments is doing exactly that, is allowing people a little bit of escape and a little bit of a chance to pause.
Your research is ongoing, obviously, but do you think at some stage in the future there's a chance that people might be prescribed, quite literally prescribed, doses of virtual nature in order to improve the quality of their lives?
I very much hope so. And I think when we think about these experiences of nature at home, you know, sometimes they can be very passive. A lot of people, if they have a view, might find themselves gazing out of a window. Other people might be opening that window and tuning into the blackbird on a rooftop. But of course, other people are already watching programs like WinterWatch, like Blue Planet, like Planet Earth to get their nature fix. But we don't really understand the kind of emotional reactions and how therapeutic these kinds of experiences can be. So we're really interested to find out more about that.
Alex, thank you very much for that. I'm pleased to say that Alex's research is informing a new initiative that the BBC have taken on board. It's called BBC Soundscapes for Wellbeing. And there are soundscapes and lots of natural sounds that you can access via BBC Sounds. Details are on our website, of course. And this will feed back into Alex's experiment called the Virtual Nature Experiment. And we've got a number of people who've contributed those soundscapes. Chris Watson, the legendary wildlife sound recordist, has done one, and so has Nainita Desai. She's a composer for movies, a great repertoire of work that she has there too. And you can access these via the website and listen to them yourself.
Absolutely. The scientists would love you to get involved. If you go onto the website, there'll be questionnaires there. So you'll notice how you feel at the beginning, and then you have the opportunity to watch some films, listen to some soundscapes, even some soundscapes that you can create yourself, because the number of sounds available to you is actually doubled with this project. And then you can notice how you feel, fill in those questionnaires again. It will help scientists understand the effect of digital nature better, so that we can better help people who are refined to their homes or potentially hospitals. So a really fantastic resource there.
Brilliant stuff.
Now, of course, we all have our happy places where we go when things get a bit dark, things get a bit dreary, and they make us feel instantly better. For me, I love being by the sea. It really makes me feel very happy. I know you...
This is it. This is my happy place. This is the places I'm happiest on planet Earth. The woods around here are just so good.
We've all got those special places, and we're really lucky because Gillian has offered to take us to the place where she feels most confident, where she feels most joy. So let's go and experience Gillian's happy place.
This is the one place where all that's ever asked of me is to be still and observe. And in my stillness, I see that everything is in a state of flux. It reminds me to accept that things change, and that change is the nature of life. And it's not just about what I see when I'm out in nature, it's engaging all the senses. And I know we keep joking about the rain and talking about the rain maybe, but even out here, these are all the elements. It is all part of nature and it creates that experience. But like I said, it's not just the sights, it's the sounds. And we have heard a little bit about how sounds can help to calm us. But you know, it's worth taking a listen at some sounds that do the opposite. Now, take a listen, I should say, to this. Now, this is a pre-recorded sound. You will know it as soon as you hear it. That is the sound of the howling wind. It's an approaching storm. You can imagine the sea getting whipped up, and this is the kind of sound that we find quite stressful. It's difficult to sleep when there is a storm, and I guess that makes sense. It's the kind of event that would cause some kind of harm, that would be a threat. But how about a nice calm sound? Now, this is one of my favorites. Now, let's listen to this. That is the sound of the waves crashing on a shingle beach. But I want you to listen out for the sound of the waves retreating. That's the bit I love. That is just such a gorgeous sound. And another favorite of mine is this one. Now this is very, very specific. This is the sound of the wind again, but listen out. Might not be immediately obvious. But this is the sound of the wind moving through the leaves in the canopy of a forest. Now the name for this is sithurism. It's a beautiful word in my mind, and it's very specific. It's the sound of the wind in the trees, not the leaves rustling, dried up leaves on the forest floor. It is a sound of the waves. And the Japanese have a lovely name for this experience. It's called forest bathing, Shinrin-yoku. And in my mind, I think of that sound as like a wash of sound. So it really, God, I love it. It's absolutely lovely. Now, I know that you will have a lot of your favorite sounds. We would love to hear about what those are, but also your photos. Keep sending them in. Use that Winter Watch List hashtag. And yeah, we're just looking forward to hearing more and seeing more of what you enjoy about nature. Now, for the whole week, Megan has been championing the underdogs of the natural world, those creatures that are hard to love. And for some people, pigeons are pretty hard to love, but Megan is determined to change not just hearts, but to change minds.
Pigeons and the high street. Today they are as common a pairing as fish and chips, tea and biscuits, or even ant and deck.
There are hundreds of millions of urban pigeons around the world, and many of which are thought to be living in our towns and cities.
Now, these birds aren't wild, they are feral, domesticated from pigeons that we used to keep for their meat and for their eggs.
They're descended from rock doves, a cliff-dwelling bird who substituted their ancestral homes for our building ledges. But with so many of them pooing in our public spaces, many people consider them to be the ultimate urban nuisance and lacking in intelligence. That hasn't always been the case, though. It's been well documented that pigeons helped us during 2 world wars. British troops exploited their natural homing abilities by sending messages from frontliners in Europe to the military top brass back in the UK.
Their relationship with humans and their ability to send messages over long distances dates back further than we ever could have imagined.
Remarkably, there are what seems to be pigeons in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. It's also said that Julius Caesar used pigeons to communicate to Rome his victory over Gaul more than 2,000 years ago. Avian airmail in this country continued to be a popular and reliable way to send long-range communication up until the mid-1800s with the advent of the telegraph. So how does a pigeon navigate? Well, there's a few theories.
It's thought that pigeons are able to detect odour from the environment in order to pull directional information out. Whether there's a presence of an odour or, in fact, the non-presence of an odour enables them to find their way home faster. Another option is that they use the sun to orientate themselves. But what happens when it's cloudy? Well, another thought is that they use landmarks. They use roads and buildings in order to judge exactly where they are and exactly where they need to go.
So there's really more to pigeons than meets the eye. And scientists in the USA have been researching just how their bird brains could help with modern-day medicine.
Hi, Victor.
Hello.
Hi.
Victor Navarro is a doctor of psychology affiliated with the University of Iowa, and his studies have unearthed some unbelievable abilities.
So pigeons are incredibly adept at visual tasks. I was interested in leveraging those abilities to study how they can integrate visual information into complex behavior.
And how then have you been applying that to medicine?
So one of our most recent lines of research has to do with medical image perception. And one of our latest projects involved teaching pigeons to distinguish between benign and malignant breast tissue samples.
That is just the most incredible thing.
The pigeon studies 24 pre-diagnosed tumour scans. It pecks the yellow button if the tumour is benign, or the blue button if it's malignant. A correct response results in a food reward. This training was repeated for 2 weeks before completely new scans were introduced, and they found when combining the responses of all the pigeons that astonishingly they could diagnose breast cancer to an accuracy of 99%.
So, could we potentially in the future be replacing doctors with pigeons?
Although some people may seem to think so, we clearly stated we do not expect pigeons to replace professional radiologists or pathologists anytime soon. But we can use the pigeon as a surrogate observer in studies of medical image perception. We can use them to develop and benchmark different techniques to improve the learning and the accuracy of these categorization tasks.
And these pigeons which you're studying are the feral ones which are around me here.
They're exactly the same pigeons you see around in the park.
For me now, I'm going to be looking at them so differently now I know all of this. I genuinely never thought that I'd come across the fact that pigeons could diagnose diseases. You know, for an animal which has, for the best part of 5,000 years, been a hero of communication, perhaps going forward, they'll be used for medicine too. If that isn't a reason to love pigeons, then I really don't know what is. I mean, diagnosing breast cancer.
I know, amazing.
Incredible, an animal we see all the time, but it shows to show we've got a lot left to learn from the animals that we do encounter. Now, of course, we have cameras dotted all around, and it's great to catch up with them. So let's have a look at what's going on. Here are our 9 cameras here. Let's have a little bit of a look. Looks quite quiet at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a badger in the top middle. There
Out
we
in
go.
the rain there. Oh yes, look, it's a badger. It's on one of the cameras near the set, isn't it?
Yeah,
braving it
around.
tonight, coming out in the pouring
well,
rain.
they've got a nice thick coat there, haven't they? So
I suppose that.
not feeling it too much, but there we go. Look at that, and we also have a live mouse.
Let's have a look. We
Let's
had
have a
a
little
mouse,
look.
didn't we, just a minute
It's,
ago?
it's
We still
coming
got
up,
that?
and there we go. Absolutely gorgeous.
Look at that.
Loving to see that.
Excellent.
Now, a lot of our cameras are dotted all over the place, but we have some a bit closer to home as well, don't we?
We do
We
indeed,
do.
because in the little staddle barn behind us there, up on those sort of little bits of stone to keep rodents out, there are actually lots of rodents, and we've got cameras in there. We were putting the cameras in there during Autumn Watch and Spring Watch, and you might remember a mouse sneaking under a door and then emulating that classic movie Indiana Jones when it used its tail to flick a hat back out again. Well, look at this. We've set up another sort of test chamber for the mice there. Here is a tube with a U-bend in it And we've been encouraging the mice to explore this by putting some nuts in. Now they've been doing that. Here you see a wood mouse coming in, finds the nut,
Has a nibble.
and of course at this time of year it does what it always does, takes it back out to cache it. And they've been exploring this for a number of days, building up their confidence as they need to do. But I have to tell you that this mouse is about to emulate another classic film. I wonder what it could be, given that there's a U-bend here. Where do we typically find a U-bend in our houses? Well, behind the toilet.
That's the last place it expected to end up.
You know what I'm going to say? This is what you pay your licence fee for. Yes! A wood mouse emulating train spotting. Only on WinterWatch, folks, could that possibly happen.
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant. But of course, it's using its nose and its whiskers there because it is smelling a nice buffet of peanuts that we've left out for it. So have a little look at this because it's a little bit nervous getting off the toilet seat. It can smell, of course, very sensitively, so it can see, well, I can't see what's there. It's pitch black. We're using infrared light, so no white light whatsoever. But it can smell what's just in front of its nose, but it's not entirely sure how to get out. It kind of has a look, it goes back down, comes up, it has a look again.
It's quite reluctant to leave the toilet seat, isn't it? I've had that problem over the years. You know, when I've had some seafood, when I used to eat seafood going back a while. Let's not get into it. Anyway,
no,
look,
let's not.
Look at this. It's very tentative, but it's displaying lots of natural behaviours that we would see if it's out in the hedgerow.
Yeah.
It's balancing with its tail. And look at the way here it's hanging on with its back legs.
It's doing some kind of yoga.
Yes, stretches
it's stretching.
down.
How far can it reach without having to let go of its perch on the toilet seat?
Yeah, and look at that. And then, of course, once they find the nuts, they're backwards and forwards, taking all of those out.
Caching them all away. Amazing, isn't it?
Look at that.
Incredible to see.
Yeah. Superb. And of course the thing was that we presumed that it was only one mouse that had learned where the nuts were and was doing its train spotting stint. But as it turned out, there were at least two.
There are at least two. Two had learned how to use the toilet. It's pretty impressive.
It's always great to watch those small mammals, but of course catching up with them can be quite tricky. You can't always have cameras out in a barn. You have to use other tools. And one of the tools of the trade that I've had for some time, in fact I bought this in 1977, is this Longworth small mammal trap. It catches the animals alive, of course, and holds them in this chamber until you can recover them. And used responsibly, this is a great way of sampling which small mammals are available in an environment. What about that piece of history?
Yeah, it's great. Although technology...
I own that when you weren't even a cell.
Yeah, you used these to teach me how to identify small rodents. I remember using these. Yeah.
I did. Yeah.
But technology has moved on, I'm afraid, Chris, a little bit. I've got something a little bit fancier here for you. Look at this device.
You've got a green plastic box.
I've got a green plastic box and a microphone. Now, this is a very sensitive special microphone, and when it's placed up top, looking down, it can pick up the sounds of rodents in the undergrowth.
It's a static acoustic recording device. And these have been very useful in recent times when it comes to bioacoustics. Stuart Houston at the BTO had a scheme running in East Anglia where people borrowed these and put them in their gardens so that they could pick up bats. The interesting thing was they didn't just pick up bats, they picked up bush crickets and lots of small mammals too. So the researchers moved on and... look at that for a graphic.
Here we go. Isn't it great, isn't it? So you've got all the rodents down here. You've got house mouse all the way down to your water vole and the frequency of the flattest part of the call here. So to our human ears, they might sound pretty similar if we're out listening in the undergrowth, but to these sensitive microphones, then they look very, very different, don't they? From the house mouse to the water vole, the peaks are different, the lengths are different. Very clear to distinguish.
And I put that static acoustic device out here in the woods and we got some recordings. Let's hear one of them now. Let's hear what I recorded with that. Curious whistling. Now, I've got to be honest with you, had I heard that out in the woods, I wouldn't have been able to tell you what it was. But using the device, it was proved to be this animal. Yes, that is a call that's made by a wood mouse. We've also got some other animals on there. Listen to this. That sounds like the tail end of a damned record just before it hits the end of the groove and lifts back the arm back. But it wasn't actually. That was this, identified by this bioacoustic science, these algorithms that they've got, as a pygmy shrew. And what's particularly useful about that is that it separates the pygmy shrew from the common shrew. So whilst they look very similar, and when you see them out in the wild, if you're ever lucky enough to do so, separating them would be almost impossible. Using this remote sensing, we can tell them apart.
It's incredible, isn't it? It's an amazing piece of technology, and the BTO are launching something very exciting this month. They're launching the acoustic pipeline. So if anyone's out there with a bat detector and you have some recordings that you think might have small mammals on it, what you can do is you can upload this recording onto their website. All of the details will be on our website as well, and it will tell you within 24 hours what species you've managed to record, which
Fantastic.
is remarkable,
so
isn't
you
it?
catch a little squeak out in the bushes, you upload it, and within 24 hours you know exactly what it is. Squeaking in the bushes. Do you know, the last time I heard a tremendous amount of squeaking in the bushes, it was Iolo Williams getting very excited about a bird he'd seen.
Yes, that was a long time ago now. It was a long time ago now. Now, a very impressive list of mammals you've got there, but there's one mammal you forgot. Not a species, just one individual animal. I know what it is and I know what it's doing. It's an edible dormouse and it's fast asleep and it's snoring. Listen to this. How cool is that? A snoring edible dormouse. Now on this programme over the years we've brought you some fantastic things, haven't we? Do you remember the dreaming water rail? The sneezing kestrel? Well, to that you can now add a snoring edible dormouse. And if you looked in that nest, it looked very warm, very cosy, not like here in mid Wales this evening. And if you'd have dug underneath those dry leaves, you'd have found some lichen, very good bedding. And they're amazing things, lichen, and much overlooked as well. Did you know that 7% of the Earth's surface is covered in lichen? And this part of mid Wales happens to be really good for them, as I found out when I went out to the woods for a walk the other day. Here we are, we're in the Centre for Alternative Technology in the Dyfi Valley, of course, and the woodlands around here, they're festooned in mosses, but also lichens. Lichens hanging from the branches, along the stone walls, even along the floor. And for its size, Wales has the highest diversity of lichen species in the world. We have 1,250 species of lichens here in Wales. We used to be good at rugby, now we're good at lichens. Why is Wales so good? Well, a combination of things really. Clean air, that's critical. Also, we're right in the west, so the weather is quite mild in winter, but the critical thing, it's rain. It's lots and lots and lots of water. That's why they thrive here. So what is a lichen? Well, a lichen is a kind of a marriage. It's a symbiotic relationship between a fungus and usually an alga. So both of them benefit. The alga produces food, so the fungus will steal some of that, but the alga also gets protection, particularly from the sun. And this is why they can thrive in the most hostile areas. Look at this bare rock behind me here. These white spots, those are algae. They thrive there because of this amazing relationship that they have where nothing else can live. So while you're out and about, I want you to keep your eyes open for some lichen, okay? Here are a couple of common ones for you to look out for. Now the first one is a pixie cup fungus. This is an easy one. It looks like a sort of a grey-green golf tee, and I usually find this in fairly rocky, mossy areas like that. The next one here, this one is called a matchstick fungus. This is very narrow, like a matchstick, with that red head on it. And those red heads, those are the fruiting bodies that will produce the spores. And these I usually find on old rotting stumps. Again, both of those very common. The final one here, this is called a tree lungwort. Now this one is very much a western speciality. This one is found in western Wales, western Ireland, western Scotland, and down in the southwest of England, and called the tree lungwort because it looks like a lung hanging down there. And these lichens, they're amazing things. They are very good indicators of clean air. If you've got polluted air, not many lichens will thrive there, and they can also hold an awful lot of water. Forget Gillian and her beaver. What you really need is lots of lichen. They're amazing, amazing things. Now, time to take a bit of breath. Down in the depths of Devon, there's a gnarled old oak woodland covered in mosses. It's a place of myths and legend. And for the next 90 seconds, it's also our mindfulness moment.
Beautiful, beautiful. But I'm going to go straight to something we've just seen on our cameras. Look at this. This is one of our badgers, and it's got prey. Look, that's a grey squirrel, isn't it? A couple of the badgers there, no, they're going to be fighting about that, I'm sure. At this time of year, a large piece of fresh meat like that is going to provide a very valuable meal for the badger. Fantastic stuff on our live cameras, but sadly that's all we've got time for today. We will be back tomorrow, of course. I'm going to be taking a look at these birds. Simply extraordinary and very, very beautiful, the spoonbills.
And I'm going to take a walk down memory lane and see the seasonal spectacle of flying red kites.
And we witness a female badger, a female beaver even, getting familiar with her new home in Plymouth. This is the site of Britain's first urban beaver release.
All of that coming up tomorrow. Remember, you can watch our live cameras, though, from 10 in the morning through till 10 at night. You can do that on our website. Catch up with the winter watch list as well if you're out and about, and take any photographs, get any videos. We would love to see them. Upload them to Twitter, Facebook and Instagram as per usual. Tonight it's all been about well-being, so we're going to leave you tonight with the Kaleidoscope Orchestra playing out so we can calm things down and listen to a bit more of WinterWatch versus Vivaldi. What a mix!